Welcome to ESVN, the MS Sports Vigilant Network Show. My name is... Hello. Okay, try it again. Welcome to ESVN, the Emma Sports Vigilant Network Show. My name is Emma Vigilant. You know what to do. Subscribe to this channel, youtube.com/ESVN show. Put on push notifications. Rate us 5 stars wherever you're listening to this on any podcast platform. And thank you to Brennan from Kentucky, because I'm going to have a little bit of this beer here. Nacho Bait Habanero Blonde Ale. I've been warned by Bradley Alsop. Say hello.
Hello. I really was not expecting that introduction today that you sped through. It was 2 times speed.
This is spicy
yes,
beer.
Nacho Bait. I had this. I've told Brennan from Kentucky about this, but I had this on our last debate night, and I was shocked at how spicy it was.
All right, well, let's...
It's very delicious and like singularly flavored. So super big kudos to Brendan from Kentucky for sending this to us.
I'm gonna try it out.
Yeah, give it.
I mean, okay, so it smells authentically like hot sauce.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of savory almost in how it tastes, but that's kind of why I think it's interesting.
Here it says, this beer is sneaky. You think you know it all, or you think you know it well, but don't let the first taste fool you.
That's right.
Ale brewed with habaneros, Nacho Bait will leave you feeling the burn and wanting more.
That's how I felt.
It's spicy. Okay. It's spicier as the longer it sits with
you.
Yeah.
Oh,
but it's quite good.
It is good. It's like I was not expecting to like it as much as I did.
I never thought about putting hot sauce and beer together, but I guess those two things go well. I mean, I'm a hot sauce person.
Yes, I also like spicy. But
of the 3 major hot sauces that you'll find at diners in the Northeast, what is your favorite? There's like Cholula.
I love Cholula, but Frank's is my favorite.
Frank's
is my favorite.
And
I don't like Tabasco.
And Tabasco. Okay, so I would rank it in the same way. Cholula is definitely my favorite. I think it's the creamiest. And
yes,
that's what I like the most.
Thick.
Yeah.
It's viscous.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so much viscous in the Cholula.
The true viscosity.
And then I would say, Frank's, and Tabasco is just so watery, and
yeah, I just like it. There's nothing about it. I've never enjoyed it. It's harsh to me almost.
And those are the 3, right, that you mostly would see at a diner.
I like Tapatio. That's another good one.
Yeah, I know, but that's definitely
yes.
It's not in the big 3 automakers.
No, it's not in the big 3 automakers. Yeah. It's not Ford, GM, or Stellantis.
Okay, understood. Of those, which one is Cholula? Which one was the first to...
Tabasco was 1,000% Stellantis.
Okay.
100%.
Yeah, Tabasco is totally Stellantis.
Then I would say Cholula is Ford and Frank's is GM.
Yeah, and Ford came first in terms of the agreement with the UAW, right? So stands to reason, Cholula is the best. Of those big 3 automakers, Ford is the least terrible, and so there we go. We move on with our lives.
I agree.
Well, anyway, that was an interesting start to the show.
Yeah, anyways.
We are going to be giving our picks against the spread, but also ripping into David Tepper and then analyzing this crazy Corey Perry situation. Before we get into our locks, we'll just say Bradley and I both went 2-1 last week. Finally, a respectable week from us both.
I was gonna say, I think it's maybe the first over 500 week I've had in maybe all season potentially.
It's been a rough year. It's been a bizarre, rough, injury-laden year. But before we get into that, let's talk here about the David Tepper press conference. So, multi-billionaire David Tepper, who was the wealthiest owner in the NFL upon his purchase of the Carolina Panthers until the Walmart clan bought the Denver Broncos, but they're a very wealthy family. David Tepper is a hedge fund kingpin and is wealthy and a bully into him in and of himself, I should say. And he has shown a degree of impatience with the roster, with the coaching staff, that I don't know if is replicable in the NFL in the way that he's run through coaches. He bought the team. He fired Ron Rivera. That was expected. But he was impulsive in overpaying Matt Rule so that Matt Rule wouldn't get on a plane and go to interview with the New York Giants. And that experiment failed. Steve Wilkes took over as interim coach and actually did kind of well. And he ended up ousting him without really any consideration, another black coach in the NFL who doesn't get the fair shake when it comes to the head coaching positions. And then he hired Frank Reich, who, won the Super Bowl as the offensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles. I would say he overperformed in Indianapolis after the departure of Andrew Luck in the middle of preseason. And he had just a carousel of older starting quarterbacks that didn't really set the team up for immense success, but he made the most out of that situation and ended up getting fired by Jim Irsays mid-season last year. And then Tepper hired him presumably for like a significant contract, because that's how Tepper operates, to pry these guys away from other teams. And also, as I've said, Reich has played for the Carolina Panthers before and has a history with that organization. And so as a quarterback, he backed up Jim Kelly with the Buffalo Bills, played for the Panthers for a little bit. So it looked like a marriage that could totally work out. But when you look through Frank Reich's history, he's always been a more traditional quarterback, pocket passing guy, a big quarterback who can see over the line, who has a big arm, who can take hits. That's always been his MO. And I think part of the reason why he took the job in Indianapolis was because he thought he'd be coaching Andrew Luck, who was the prototypical pocket passer in that way and was quite incredible at it, despite the fact that he had to retire so early. So with all of that context, this is David Tepper at his press conference a few days ago, which was, Elon Musk's horrific display kind of overshadowed in my consumption of this kind of stuff, how horrible this press conference was in terms of as a look for David Tepper. But this is him talking about the choice in the selection of Bryce Young over CJ Stroud.
Now, it's been reported, and we talked about it. Originally, we were going to go with the number 2 pick, and we thought we would get CJ because we thought the Texans were going to pick Bryce. And listen, we preferred Bryce. He was our number 1 pick. We had a lot of conviction. But in answer to your questions, it's just not the way the process was done. The process was done the way the process was done. And again, even though if there was a process with 5 people in the room, and the way the votes came in, Frank was the first choice, I always could veto that choice. And even if it was Bryce and the votes came in unanimously in this particular case, I could have vetoed that choice.
Okay, pause it for a sec. So this is a very odd admission by him. Why is he admitting that there's a structure of a democratic process with the people who have worked in football their entire lives, and this guy's only been an NFL owner for a few years at this point, and he's essentially saying, because he can't help it because his ego is that massive. And that's what it takes to be like a multi-billionaire in hedge funds.
He's like, to be clear, I am a dictator.
Yeah, to be clear, I could ignore the advice of my entire organization if I chose to.
It's almost making me...
Not saying I did it in this instance, but...
It's almost making me feel like this is obviously pure speculation, but it's almost like, I'm wondering if everyone told him to take CJ Stroud and he was like, no. I mean,
either way, it's quite obvious that there's no chance, given the skill set that CJ Stroud displayed and that I was vocal about leading up to the draft process as being far superior to that of Bryce Young, that there weren't people in the Frank Reich orbit. And Josh McCown, who was put on the team, who was also fired, by the way. It makes me think that the people that were fired were the most pro CJ Stroud people, but that's putting that aside for a second. That there wasn't one voice in the room that said maybe we should go with the guy that's 6'3" and has incredible mechanics and a quick release and can make every throw on the field versus the 5'10" guy who's completely undersized. That there wasn't one voice in that room. He's trying to make it seem like it was unanimous and he also didn't veto it, while also making it clear that he could have vetoed it if he wanted to. It's bizarre, but keep going.
It's the first choice. I always could veto that choice. And even if it was Bryce and the votes came in unanimously in this particular case, I could have vetoed that choice. In both cases, I supported both choices. Okay? I'm just going to say that I supported both choices. I supported the coaches. I supported the scouts, their unanimous opinion. And I supported Frank Reich. So whatever's good, bad, or indifferent is ultimately, because the buck stops here, and I take full responsibility for everything. But that's the way the process runs.
And fire yourself.
And just one last thing, and then we're going to go here. As far as Bryce Young is concerned, I cannot say this, for myself, and I think everybody in this building would share this sentiment. We are totally confident in that pick. Okay, I think the people that made that pick first, would be totally confident in that. Some of them you could ask. Okay, and I think and for me, I'm totally confident in agreeing with that pick.
All right, thank you.
And then he leaves there. Reportedly, there was a local Charlotte reporter who had written a critical opinion piece about David Tepper before that press conference, who was not allowed to ask a question. And you can hear him desperately trying to get Tepper to respond as he leaves the podium there. But your thoughts, Bradley, on that response. Okay, before you actually give your thoughts, one quick aside. Why mention CJ Stroud at all? He's not a part of your organization, and it's just I can't think of any kind of executive or owner that would do that, because you're literally then reinforcing, which is the obvious narrative. But as somebody who owns this football team, you're reinforcing the narrative that they're always going to be compared for the rest of their careers. And clearly CJ Stroud will have a superior career.
Yeah, I mean, he could have only said, I mean, there's a world where he just said, we have no regrets about the pick. We're standing by our guy that we chose, point blank, period. That's it. Instead, he was if we had the 2 pick, we would have picked somebody else.
Yeah, right.
but we didn't.
But then why would you have tried to trade up to the 2 pick to take CJ Stroud if you thought that you had the conviction to give away all those assets to make such a move? It would instill confidence in your fans that you knew the guy that you were going for when you made that choice.
But then it's also he's but then we got the number 1 pick, which we since we got the number 1 pick, we had always wanted Bryce. And it's it just seems a little, it's weird that he led with the fact that if they had the number 2 pick, they would have taken Stroud because they assumed the Texans were going to take Bryce Young, and then qualified that afterwards by saying, but we were always going to take Bryce if we had the number 1 pick, which we did.
Although the Bears had the number 1 pick. So I don't understand how that analysis, is he saying the Texans would have traded up?
Right. I guess that's the only, yes. Yeah. Right.
The Bears had number 1. The Texans had number 2. So you're saying you would have traded with the Texans and then the Texans would have gone up to 1? It's entirely incoherent.
Yeah. It just seems like a lot of it's a lot of equivocating for someone who could have just said, without any mention of the pick, the draft order, we made the choice to draft Bryce. We're very happy with Bryce. We want to continue forward with Bryce, and we know that we have faced a lot of adversity this season, but we still have a young core,
totally,
and are looking towards the future. Instead, he was well, a little inside baseball for you here.
Yeah, no, and it was.
If we had the 2nd pick, we would have picked a different quarterback.
Yeah, how's that supposed to make him feel? How's that supposed to make him feel? And really, it's just him working backwards from a PR nightmare for the team, which is
also firing firing your year 1 head coach mid-season, and your first year quarterbacks coach mid-season, the team being 1-10, the offensive line being terrible, the skill position group not being even remotely competitive. There's a lot more to the personnel failure of this team than the rookie quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. And just he's trying to spin to the media and then ended up kind of throwing Bryce Young under the bus in that roundabout way by saying we would have been the best case scenario is him saying we would have been happy with either guy, which is not something you need to say about a guy that's been on your roster for
2 months.
Well, right, but you're supposed to, he's the number 1 overall pick. You're adding more pressure to saying that it was a coin flip and we didn't really believe in you. But I don't believe that that's the case. I think that David Tepper was sold on Bryce Young as a guy and a communicator and thought that they had a great dinner, as opposed to really understanding what it takes to make it work in the NFL. But what he's doing there is just trying to say everybody else was going to take Bryce Young too. We didn't misevaluate it. And that is, I think, a complete counterfactual and probably not true, because there are many, many teams that have a threshold for a quarterback and that wouldn't take a quarterback that's even like better than Bryce Young, like Kyler Murray, who has more athleticism, who has more upside as a passer. They wouldn't take him because of his size, particularly teams that play outdoors and teams that are in, tough weather conditions. That's often the philosophy of a lot of these teams. And so it doesn't stand to reason that everybody considered Bryce Young the number one overall pick. And so it shields us from criticism. It's just, that's not true.
But I think that's also the weird equivocation as well, which is that it almost seems like he's trying to have this operate almost as like, it's not like a backhanded compliment, but it's almost him saying something as like a compliment to Bryce, being like, if we were at number 2, we thought we'd have Stroud because everyone was gonna, like you said, everyone was gonna pick Bryce at 1.
Yeah.
So when we got to 1, we had to take Bryce. But it's also like, okay, but you weren't, as you're saying too, Emma, like the Panthers weren't at 2 to begin with.
Yeah.
So like, if they wanted to trade up to get Stroud with the assumption that Bryce Young was going to go at 1, as you said before, they could have just tried to make a trade with the Texans with the assumption that the Bears would have taken Bryce Young at 1.
Yeah.
So it's like,
it doesn't pass the smell test.
yeah, it just seems like a lot of roundabout logic to sort of be like, we would have been fine with the 2nd overall pick getting the guy who was significantly better than our quarterback so far.
Yeah, and will always be better. I'm sorry. Like, there's no question in my mind. I'm making this declarative statement now, but I mean, like, it's clear
getting a little
field.
bit different only because like he's kind of playing like top 10 quarterback ball now, which is like insane. Like, it's crazy to think about that just because he's so early on in his career.
Yes.
But like, if him and Bryce were both sort of like top 20 area, it would make more sense to think they can, like, we'll see what happens. But like, he's performing better than I even thought he could.
Oh, anybody
in his rookie year. So
Yeah.
I think that's maybe the difference maker. But
I mean, I was his number 1 fan, and I didn't anticipate how he could perform.
even now, especially with the talent on the Texans too, I wouldn't have expected it either.
Yeah.
And they're like actually like competing for a playoff spot.
And one last thing about this, like, I don't actually believe that the room was unanimous about Bryce Young based on what I was saying before.
That's my thinking too.
I think he's BSing for the media, but also, even if it was unanimous, that doesn't mean garbage. If the owner, who is like one of the richest people on planet Earth, a multi-billionaire, has communicated with the entire team that, like, no, this is the guy that we're taking. So, like, even if it was unanimous, I don't believe that. It's a completely rigged election, if you want to phrase it like that.
It's also kind of hysterical that it's like sort of like a classic, like, the buck stops with me. Like, I take full responsibility, but he's also like, but even if everyone was being a fucking moron,
Yeah.
like maybe they were,
Yeah.
and unanimously telling me something that I didn't like to hear, which would piss me off, I would say no and completely override them because the buck stops with me, and I don't actually listen to anybody.
Yeah, exactly.
So, like,
He's trying to have it 360-degree ways, and
Right.
it's just not going to work, buddy.
where it's like it's my way or the highway, but also people can tell me stuff that I don't want to hear, but I'm literally never going to listen to them regardless because I have veto power over anybody else in the room.
Yeah,
Like-
it's incredible for him to say the buck stops with me, but here are all of the excuses that I have for
Right,
you, and
right.
they also don't make any sense when they're said in conjunction with one another. But I don't really give a crap.
And our bases were covered basically regardless of where we picked and regardless of who said what.
Yes.
Yeah.
So David Tepper really on his way to shooting up the board, not the boards, but the
The rankings
rankings
of like worst owners and most annoying owners
in the
yeah.
NFL. Yeah, there we go.
Especially with the non-Snyder version of the owner
Yes.
suite in the
Yes.
NFL for
Yes.
sure. Because even with the fact of like how insane and kind of unhinged Jim Irsay is, like Jim Irsay going on having that interview saying like, I'm discriminated against because I'm an old white billionaire.
Yeah.
And then being like, my black mother would be so disgusted at you, Jamel Hill or whoever. I don't remember if it was Jamel Hill. He was quote tweeting like a black sports.
Jim Irsay has a black mother?
He was okay. I shouldn't have said it, but I'm not saying I shouldn't have said it because it's not verifiable. I'm saying it's going to be a longer explanation.
Well, now I need to know.
He responded to, I think it was either Jamel Hill, it was a black woman sports commentator who responded to this interview he had where he said, I was saying I'm being discriminated against when he got like a DUI or was arrested because I'm a rich white billionaire. That's what the police like reported him as saying. And he was like, and in a recent interview, he was like, I stand by that. Like I still believe that. And then he responded to I think it was Jamel Hill, but I don't know if I'm remembering it correctly, where he was like, "How dare you? My black mother Dorothy would be so upset," and everyone was like, "Wait, what is he talking about? He has a black mother." Then he went on to clarify that his black mother is his
babysitter,
housekeeper. That when he was younger, that was basically his mother who raised him, and that
of course.
That so he essentially de facto has a black mother because she lived in their house and took care of him,
and was his parents' employee.
Right.
Yeah, his parents, who, one of them was the owner of the Indianapolis Colts.
Right. So that's what he was saying, and he was like, "Of course, I could never possibly be racist or prejudicial because I had a black mother who was my parents' employee."
Yeah, there we go.
So even the reason I even bring up that story at all is because although Jim Irsay is this type of eccentric freak.
And is like a child in the movie The Help.
Right. Has this like very deranged view of the world and may or may not be, on ketamine all the time, a la Elon Musk, allegedly. At the very least, they chose Shane Steichen to be their head coach and rid themselves of the Jeff Saturday experience and picked Anthony Richardson when they had the chance to.
Yeah.
Whereas like Tepper's here, and it seems as if as of the 1-10 season that they're having, firing their head coach and quarterbacks coach before the end of the season, and the team looking the way it does, he's an asshole and also fucked up their team.
Yeah, and Frank Reich's probably looking at it like, damn, like I signed up for the David Tepper experience because I thought it couldn't get worse than Jim Irsay.
Right. And here I am.
And boy, did it. Yeah. Man. All right. So the Carolina Panthers somehow, with like the money that this owner is willing to spend, is now the most dysfunctional team in the NFL. Yeah. Okay. Quick.
Non-Raiders, I guess, maybe.
Yes. Quick story here because we really don't have any facts, but there has been a story circulating online that Corey Perry of the Chicago Blackhawks has, and this is the story, it's completely unverified and probably not true based on just stupid hockey culture. But the rumor is that Corey Perry slept with Connor Bedard's mom, and it seems like just fan fiction made up by Chicago Blackhawks fans. But it was odd because Corey Perry was essentially placed on unconditional waivers to terminate his contract over workplace misconduct was the allegation. And it's a really interesting story. One, because it says a ton about the NHL in that they cloak so much of this kind of stuff in secrecy. Two, because the Chicago Blackhawks have had a horrible history of workplace misconduct that they helped cover up at the time, but that now they're deciding to get out ahead of this story. Three, because of the rumors that were spread that were completely unverified the entire time. And also because of the players' rights issues that this seems to bring up. Because the union, the NHLPA, led now by former labor secretary for the Biden administration, Marty Walsh, is going to say, like, hey, so are you going to try to get out of paying this guy when he doesn't have any criminal complaints against him? Because that might be a violation or a breach of the contract. And there was a great write-up in the Daily Face-Off that explains a lot of this. But the sources tell the Daily Face-Off that it was a, quote, alcohol-fueled incident involving Perry that was alleged to have occurred during an event that included corporate partners and team employees in attendance.
And he just also released, I'll pull it up, but he also just very, very recently, a few minutes ago, released
Oh my
a statement.
Gosh. All right, breaking news.
I will put this up 1 second.
Yeah, I want to see this because, again, the nature of the event is still unclear. But given that statement and the sources that spoke to the Daily Face-Off, it seems like it's not anything to do with Connor Bedard's mom, which, like, again, people are just such children. It's because she's an attractive woman, so they started making these statements. But this is the statement that Corey Perry released. Here we go. Thank you, Frege. That was
Elliot Friedman, the consummate scoopster of the NHL.
I know, the only person who seems to work as an NHL scoopster. Seriously, the rest of them just retweet the team announcements.
Lower body injury.
I would like to sincerely apologize to the entire Chicago Blackhawks organization, including ownership. I would also like to apologize to my fans and my family. I am embarrassed and have let you all down. As a result of my actions, there has been speculation and rumors. I am sickened by the impact this has had on others, and I want to make it clear that in no way did the situation involve any of my teammates or their families. Most importantly, I want to directly apologize to those who have been negatively affected, and I am sorry for the additional impact to others it has created. My behavior was inappropriate and wrong. I have started working with experts in the mental health and substance abuse fields to discuss my struggles with alcohol, and I will take whatever steps necessary to ensure this never happens again. I hope to regain the trust and respect of everyone who has believed in me throughout my career. Once again, I am deeply sorry, Corey. All right, so that's seemingly clarifying that none of those internet rumors were true. But again,
well, he also and at least they must have at least gotten some sort of traction, either in the sense of like he felt it was incumbent upon him to address them, to dispel them.
Yeah,
like it ginned up enough controversy in the NHL world, and I'm sure in his personal life, to address that it specifically had nothing to do with any of his teammates or their families.
Yeah, and it's just, but it is, I want to know what happened. One, because again, this is a national league that has newsworthy relevance, and they seemingly bury all these stories all the time.
Well, it happened with this exact franchise.
Yes, before, until it was forced to come out. But it's important because the NHL, operates with a lot less scrutiny than like Major League Baseball, the NFL, and the NBA. And their player rights are just not as strong in many ways. And so if this behavior was deemed improper, but it's not illegal, what does that mean for like future precedent for players who may, have engaged in conduct that the team deems improper, but that they haven't been charged with anything criminal? And if they can just void people's contract based on that, is concerning as a precedent. Now, we would have to just see what the violations were before we were to say like, oh, the team's trying to get out of some sort of contract, but like just something to monitor, I would say. Just something to monitor, because for the most part, I don't know if this would fly in any of the other leagues I just mentioned, basically.
Yeah, and this is also of a piece, not exactly, I just mean in terms of like, this is another nebulous kind of odd, situation with a player a la, Josh Giddey in the NBA. I'm not sure if you've heard of this as well.
Yes, of course.
That apparently, Josh Giddey supposedly there are accusations or allegations that he was with an underage girl.
But they met at a club.
Yeah, and
so you could also presume that he might have made an assumption about her age that wasn't accurate.
Yeah, and so all that is to say is the NBA has already announced that they're investigating this. Whereas with the NHL, it's like we hear that they've cut ties or severed ties with Corey Perry for some inappropriate conduct. We have very little specificity whatsoever. But with the Giddey thing, also, what was weird that I saw, I don't know if you saw this too, is that like, a bunch of different like athletes and commentators were like specifically targeting Malika Andrews, because they said that apparently Malika Andrews only makes comments on controversy surrounding black athletes and had not made a sufficient amount of commentary on Josh Giddey. So that was very odd to me. Des Bryant had like a very long tweet about Malika Andrews and how she was like not focusing enough attention on it. I was like, this seems like a weird, like kind of almost ginned up social media controversy about like one broadcaster. There have been a few weird athlete stories recently with some nebulous kind of controversies with not a whole lot of details. And this is also after, speaking of Chicago, everything with like the running backs coach and the defensive coordinator with the Bears.
We don't even know what happened there.
Nothing has, I don't think anything further has come out about either of those situations either. So it's not been a great few months for Chicago athletes and managers and position coaches.
Certainly
with,
not.
Kind of cloudy accusations against them, but and just to be clear, it was Kimberly Martin from First Take who Irsay was talking about, not Jamel Hill. I just wanted to clarify.
Gotcha. That. Yeah. No worries. All right. Well, with that, we've covered our bases. Let's go into our locks.
Yes, let's.
ESVN.
Stone Cold Lock of the Century. All week.
Yeah. 2-1, both of us. Yes, let's go. Yeah.
We did go 2-1 last week, each of us. So maybe we're starting to get our groove. Holy crap, that beer is spicy.
It packs a punch, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I like spicy stuff, and I thought I could take it, but
it's impressive.
it's just interesting because beer is usually, or like whatever, a beverage is there to like clear out the spice.
It's like a,
but
it staunches it a little bit, but this
yeah.
one kind of contributes.
Well, anyway.
But you also you beat me in the head-to-head between the.
I thought the Jags would definitely kind of cement themselves, and they ended up doing that. So the one loss Bradley had was he picked the Houston Texans plus 1.5, and I picked the Jaguars, and the Jaguars covered that game. I did not get the Saints covering right. We'll see how I fare in that way in this upcoming week. Yeah, but I don't have the rest of our picks in front of me. I'm sorry. I meant to.
Oh, that's fine. Let me see. I'll get him 1 second.
No problem. But you did have the Ravens covering, and they backdoor covered at the end with that Zay Flowers rushing touchdown. So that was a part of it. Oh yeah, the reason I don't have it is because we didn't do OT last week.
Exactly.
It was Thanksgiving.
Hold on a second. I had them here. Yeah, so it was Jaguars minus 1.5, Texans plus 1.5, which you hit on. Saints plus 1, Chiefs minus 8.5.
Which I got too.
Right. And then for me it was Texans plus 1.5, Broncos minus 1.5 against the Browns, and Ravens minus 3.5.
There you go.
Yeah.
So we were able to have a better week last week. Oh my gosh, again, this is so spicy. Whew. Okay. So we both went 2-1. We're abandoning the survivor pool because we both died multiple times and it's just annoying to keep up with. So let's start this week with the picks that we have for week 13 in the NFL. I'm going to go with Thursday Night Football, actually. Seattle Seahawks plus 9 in Dallas. Now, I just thought this line was way too big, and there weren't a ton of lines this week that stood out to me as exploitatable, except I just feel like that I'm hoping that the Cowboys are caught a little bit off guard, and they've been inconsistent in previous games this year. I mean, obviously, they had that loss to the Arizona Cardinals, but they can sometimes get caught off guard, and Pete Carroll is a really strong defensive coordinator, and despite, their success, I would not say that the offense has been that creative or that out of this world. It's more reliant on Dak Prescott, who's been playing really well this year, and CeeDee Lamb.
Him and CeeDee are really, really performing well.
But if Pete Carroll can find a way to limit that slightly, I just think that the Seahawks still lose this game, but they keep it close, especially because they are more desperate than the Dallas Cowboys are.
Yeah, no, I'm with you in the sense it's not that I think that it's not when I saw this that in your pick also that I thought they were going to win the game. It's more just I think they can keep it within a touchdown.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So your next pick, I actually really like this too. I think the Colts win this game.
Yeah, I'm taking the Colts -1 versus the Titans just because I feel like the Titans defense has struggled a little bit. The Jaguars kind of got right against them a few weeks ago. And even with Derrick Henry, doing his Derrick Henry thing in terms of on the offensive side, I just think this team is still relatively toothless and not playing for a whole lot.
Yeah.
And the Colts, I still have confidence in.
They're in the 7th seed right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've been playing a little bit ahead of their station first and foremost, but also I just think even with what they have, even if there's a potential, because. Correct me if I'm wrong. Do we know if we don't know about Jonathan Taylor's status fully yet, right? I think he's
going to be out.
He will be out. He will be out.
He'll be out for at least 2 to 3 weeks, I believe.
But the reason I bring that up is obviously that neutralizes a little bit of their run game, but their run game has still been has had some moments even with Zach Moss as their lead back. So I just think the process is sound enough for them, and the Colts and the defense has been playing a little bit better than the weeks prior. So I think I think the Colts are in a good spot, and I'm not saying this is like I think they're gonna make a lot more noise in the playoffs or anything like that. I just think they're kind of an overachiever story this year. So whereas I think unfortunately with what's happened with the Titans, it's been a little bit of the opposite for them.
It's giving Will Levis a run to see what he has.
Exactly.
I'm gonna go with the Dolphins in Washington -9.5. I'm gonna try to ride this wave of the Dolphins beating up on people who are not, elite teams or teams that are not elite teams. The Dolphins have a 6-1 record against the spread as favorites. The only time that they didn't really cover that spread was against the Raiders in Week 11, and I'm hoping that this is not one of the outliers in that situation, because the Washington defense is, in terms of passing yards, one of the worst in the NFL in defending that, and they're one of the worst defenses actually in points allowed and passing touchdowns. So if they're able to get Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle going, I'm hoping that the Dolphins can cover that spread and win by at least 10. I also just think the Commanders are falling apart a little bit. They have an understanding that Ron Rivera is not going to be there next year.
Yeah.
Jack Del Rio, MAGA King,
Already
getting fired.
Yep.
I mean, that just seemed like a sacrificial lamb to delay the inevitable. And
the Dolphins beat up on bad teams, so I think this is,
And I mean, I'm hoping that
suit.
they're not at home, which makes me that's the one thing that gives me pause about this spread. But I think the Dolphins are going to put their, the pedal to the metal here.
I don't know how much of a home field advantage the Commanders have yet, so...
I mean, their showers don't even have hot water,
right.
So...
If anything, the advantages, come from their infrastructural failures for the other teams.
Yeah, maybe some sort of debris will fall on Tyreek Hill or something like that. God willing, no. But I also think Tyreek Hill is just a psycho in the way that he really wants to break these records about receiving yards.
Yeah.
So he'll hopefully go off and cover that spread.
All right, for me, I'm taking the Falcons -2.5 versus the Jets because at this point, it's purely the Jets inflation that every team has. Where
I just can't trust Ritter against that defense. That's my one pause there.
But the defense hasn't even been playing that well against bad quarterbacks. Yeah. I mean, against the defense made the Chargers and the Raiders and look basically like the greatest show on turf for a few times, and especially and also and to say nothing of the defense versus the offense, in terms of Jets versus Falcons. On the other side of it, with the Tim Boyle-helmed offense, I think we're going to make this Falcons defense look like the 85 Bears. So I have absolutely no confidence whatsoever that the Jets will make this game competitive. They haven't been able to make any game competitive since the Wilson benching, or a little bit prior to that, since basically, I don't know, the Chiefs game, maybe, the Jets-Chiefs game.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm basically confident that any team playing the Jets, outside of maybe the Panthers, will have one of their best showings of the year. So that's my rationale.
That's fair enough. And this is the one I feel the worst about, and I'm starting to have regret. But again, I just feel like it's slim pickings this week.
Weird lines, weird games, honestly, for the most part, for Week 13, because there's so many weird buys. Ravens, Bills, Raiders all on bye.
So many players or so many teams on bye this week. But I just feel like, yes, the Saints have lost Michael Thomas. Again, I'm just dying from the hot sauce. Whew. Okay. I feel like I'm on hot ones. This is a preview of whoever loses.
Oh my God, yes.
So
you're training.
The Saints have lost Michael Thomas for the year. I understand that. Rashid Shaheed's banged up. He probably won't play. Olave is in concussion protocol. He probably won't play. But the Lions have averaged 31 points against, given up 31 points in the last 3 games, at least 26 points in the last 3 games against their opponents. And so with that, I just feel like at home, the Superdome is one of the better home field advantages in the NFL. I still think that the Lions will pull it off, but 4.5 points at home was just too much for me. And Derek Carr played so badly last week that I'm hoping that he's has some semblance of pride and tries to will them to, a respectable performance against the Lions, who, are reeling a little bit. And Jared Goff is struggling to not turn the ball over, and hopefully the Saints can be opportunistic on that front.
And just to buttress the point, any points about the Lions defense here. Nate Tice said this from The Athletic, said this last week. Since week 7 when they played the Ravens, the Lions defense ranks 31st in defensive success rate, 32nd in defensive EPA per play. Excuse me. QB's average time to throw is over 3 seconds, and they are giving up an 18.8% explosive pass rate. So they're basically turning every pass attempt into a snap by the Dolphins offense.
Wow.
So it's obviously the Saints aren't necessarily the most explosive offense to be doing anything in terms of that. But I mean, if basically any offense is getting that type of explosive play chance against them, they're just really they're struggling more than just like, oh, their defense is like average. It's like they're playing, they have not been playing well at all the last few weeks.
They, as I said before, like them taking Jeff Okudah and like that kind of whiffing has really set back that secondary.
But they need more like game changers on defense than just Aiden Hutchinson.
They're a year or two away from like truly contending for the Super Bowl, and the question will be like, can Jared Goff hold on to his starting job for the next few weeks of the season and see how he performs in the playoffs too if they make it. So which I assume they will. But all right, your final pick.
Yeah, so then I have the Rams minus 3.5 against the Browns, and this is not anything against the Browns defense because because of how good they've been. They struggled a little bit. I mean, honestly, the Broncos had a decent time running the ball against them last week. They actually had a pretty high rushing success rate against a really good run defense. So there might be a few. There might be a few dents in the armor there, just either by way of attrition, because Denzel Ward, I think, is maybe isn't playing. That there is some they've been a little bit banged up in the secondary as well. And also, I mean, even the offensive line is not fully healthy. Jedrick Wills, I think, is still not playing. So, and obviously, I just think,
and Myles Garrett is banged up.
Is banged up. He also was not fully healthy on Sunday. So, I think with a little bit of the defense being beat up, and obviously the massive amount of attrition they have on offense with the line, with Chubb, with Watson, they're just extremely depleted right now. And even there's a chance that Dorian Thompson-Robinson doesn't play because of his
I think
concussion.
They're going to play Flacco. Yeah.
And yeah, right. I mean, either the choices for them on offense are either PJ Walker or Joe Flacco. So like. Either one, I just think the Rams defense, while not having a lot of name brand talent, are very well coached by Raheem Morris, are very kind of savvy with how they play. And if the defense is banged up, I think the Rams will have a decent time. But Kyron Williams really went off last week.
Oh, yeah.
And
they're actually in the playoff hunt.
Right, Still in the playoff hunt after the Seahawks win, after the win last week. They're still in the hunt for sure.
They have a complete season sweep of the Seahawks. They won both of those games.
Which potentially might be huge in terms of tiebreak,
considerations for the wild card. So I hear you on that front. That half point scares me, but that would be the only thing that freaks me out.
The razor's edge, the half point.
I am going with the Seahawks +9 tonight for Thursday Night Football at Dallas, the Miami Dolphins in Washington -9.5, and the New Orleans Saints +4.5 at home against Detroit. Bradley is going with the Colts -1 in Tennessee, the Atlanta Falcons -2.5 at the New York Jets, and the Los Angeles Rams -3.5 at home against. I would like a glass of water because the hot sauce beer is not sitting well with me.
Or some milk.
We're going to sign off here, and maybe a bit of a preview if I end up losing this competition that we have going on.
Well, at the very least, you still have 4 more W's.
Knock on wood. Well, I don't know why you would knock on wood. You're invested in cursing me.
Yeah. I'm trying to block your knocks. I'm like, oh no, you can't.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will see you on Monday, folks, and we will let you know how this all shakes out. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.